Okay, okay, we're live. Let's see here. I'm going live a little bit early so that people can find us before we actually begin. Yeah, having a little bit of a difficulty today that we don't have a tech team, and so things are going to be a little bit sort of low tech today. I'm going to be using the camera on my computer, and I have a guest with me today, Jack Harris. Jack, oops. Let me see if I can get you back there.
The first camera ever.
Yeah. Yes, Jack Harris. Yeah, he'll be joining us. And just a minute here while I find my Rima. You can get rid of that. Okay, we're preparing to start the program today. Just going live a little bit early before we're actually doing it so that people can find us. But it is 5 o'clock now. Let's see, just give me just 1 minute while I find the Rima here in the Chansangyam. Because I'm in the book on blessed families. So I'm looking for 1233. Okay, and then I'm in chapter 2. Okay. And let's see here. I'm in the section on the 360,000 couple, or somebody 3.6 million family. Chapter 2, okay. Okay. So page 1325. Welcome to the King's Report. We're not quite beginning yet. I'm looking for my Rima. We don't have a tech team today, so I'm a little bit low tech today. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right, we're ready to begin now. Okay, all right, let's see. I'm trying to keep the light in front of us so that we look a little bit light. All right, welcome to the King's Report for Saturday, June 9th, 2018. This is the 9th year of Chungi 4th month and the 6th day, I believe. I didn't have time to check. And I'm Tim Elder and Jack Harris.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
And for the second Q turning group. And shall we go to the weather first? Our tech team came down with a stomach flu this morning, and so I'm using the camera on my computer, and I had to do the preparations and everything myself. So a little bit behind right now. So we're just calling up the weather right now as we speak, and continue speaking and continue speaking and continue speaking. Yes, it will come here. I know in just a minute. Maybe I should have done this with my. Let me look at my cell phone. What is the weather right now? Howdy, and today will be with some clouds, humidity 87%, wind speed, and only I could cooperate, which it is not. It's freezing on. All right. Many things are going wrong. All right, so anyway, that's the weather. 60 degrees, it says here in the Cheongguk area, going up to 80 degrees today. But anyway, increasing clouds through the day. All right, that's enough for the weather. Okay, let's look at our Rima for this morning. And as I open my Bible, I come to the page on Christianity and the American Frontier. This is the American Patriot Bible. And the king did something similar yesterday. He opened his Bible and it was to a section on the explanation about Habakkuk, the book of Habakkuk. He went ahead and read that. So I think I will follow that example and also just go ahead and read this without looking over here. This is opposite the page on Isaiah 38. But anyway, let's go ahead and read about Christianity in the American frontier. Yeah, fine. As the American frontier opened up between 1776 and 1850, American colonists first expanded out as far west as Appalachia, then pushed the frontier to the Mississippi River. By 1850, American pioneers pushed the edge of settlement to Texas, the Southwest, and the Pacific Northwest, seeking cheap land and inspired by the belief that they had a manifest destiny to stretch across the continent. In 1835, Alexis de Tocqueville, a French historian, traveled America as it was coming into its own as a nation. He wrote down his observations in Democracy in America. This classic book provides unique insights into what made America such a rapid success, which clearly he believed to be Christianity. One of his observations described what he saw happen as the American settlers spread across the continent. I have known of societies formed. This is a quoting from Alexis de Tocqueville now. I have known of societies formed by the Americans to send out ministers of the gospel into the new Western states to found schools and churches there, lest religion should be suffered to die away in those remote settlements, and the rising states be less fitted to enjoy free institutions than the people from which they emanated. I met with wealthy New Englanders who abandoned the country in which they were born in order to lay the foundations of Christianity and of freedoms on the banks of the Missouri or in the prairies of Illinois. Following the migration west, that's the end of the quote of de Tocqueville. Following the migration west from the Appalachian cabins to settlements along the Oregon Trail, the American Sunday School Union undertook a great campaign to establish a Sunday school in every new community on the western frontier and set out a large number of Sunday school missionaries. Thousands of churches eventually sprang up from these Sunday schools. One example of the tremendous influence the Sunday school movement had in American frontier life was the Mississippi Valley Enterprise, which was a missionary enterprise of the ASSU, as the American Sunday School Union, to, quote, establish a Sunday school in every destitute place where it is practicable throughout the valley of the Mississippi. The MVE established over 61,000 Sunday schools and enrolled 2,650,000 pupils in 50 years. Remarkably, one missionary, Stephen Paxson, who was born with a speech impediment and later nicknamed Stuttering Stephen, started 1,314 Sunday schools with 83,000 students during the 20 years of service with the mission. Also following the expansion west were the Methodist circuit riders, preachers on horseback who braved the cold weather and lack of roads and danger of Indian attacks to bring the gospel to the pioneers, led by the colossal efforts of Francis Asbury, who traveled nearly 300,000 miles on horseback. Well, that's a lot of mileage even today, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah, he was 300,000 miles on horseback and preached more than 16,000 sermons from 1771 to 1816. That's about what, 29 and 16 is 45 years. Wow. An army of circuit riders were inspired to go where the pioneers went. In that span of time, the Methodists grew in number from only 300 members with 4 ministers to over 200,000 with 2,000 ministers, many with little formal education, but who spoke the language of the frontier folk. The Methodists also gave unprecedented freedom to both men and the Methodists also gave unprecedented freedom to both women and African Americans to participate and make a significant contribution. Simultaneously, the Baptists sent out their farmer preachers. As was true of the Methodists, the Baptists developed systems that made it easy for committed lay people to enter the ministry and to be deployed quickly where the greatest opportunities were. Most of their preachers had little education and were poorly paid, but they were in touch with the pioneers' lives. With an emphasis on the need for a personal conversion and salvation from sin through faith in Jesus Christ, these ministers spread the gospel far and wide. As was true in the founding of the American colonies, Christians planted many of America's colleges as the nation moved west, including such notable institutions as Northwestern University in Chicago, which was founded by the Methodists, and the University of California at Berkeley, which was founded by the Presbyterians before becoming a state university. Well, Berkeley certainly has come a long way, a long way down, I would say.
Yeah, down. Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, but anyway, yes. So that is the role of Christianity during the development of the United States of America from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Yeah, I think it's important to see how especially the Methodists had developed from just a 400 people. What does it say here?
To more than 200,000.
Yeah, to more than 200,000. Here we are. 300. I see. They started out with just 300 members with 4 ministers, and then eventually had 200,000 people with 2,000 ministers, many with little formal education, but who spoke the language of the frontier folk. Wow. Yeah. So this was a very decentralized organization, both the Methodists and the Baptists. Basically, whoever was inspired to become a preacher could do so. You want to say anything about that?
Well, I'd like to consider myself a kind of a disciple of Reverend Sun Young Moon.
Great.
And his sons. I want to. A few years ago, I was given an Ambassador for Peace award, and I'm not satisfied with being an old man with a piece of paper that says Ambassador for Peace. I'm trying to be a very active Ambassador for Peace.
This, by the way, this is Jack Harris, everyone. Go ahead.
In 2008, when I published my book, I wrote the song "America and Peace," that I believe every word in the song will come, and I'm of course very supportive of the United States Constitution of Shunguk, bringing heaven on earth here. But the song "America and Peace" I like to recite. I actually sing it. I'll try to sing it for you. God has blessed America, and I believe he always will, as long as we stand with justice on top of every hill. Our soldiers are the best of us. They stand at freedom's right. Honor is their cornerstone. The law's their guiding light. The insanity of war is nearly at its end. I believe the world will find a way for all men to be friends. God has blessed America, and I believe he always will, as long as we stand with justice on top of every hill. We ask for understanding, not a military fight. We ask all men to do what all men know is right. Our world is but a cinder orbiting in space. All men should understand this is our only place. God has blessed America, and I believe he always will, as long as we stand with justice on top of every hill. A mother's tears are all the same when the soldiers fall. If they will cry together, the world would heed their call. When all men understand this song, I'll know it shows the way to honor justice, peace on earth, and all men's better day. God bless the world with peace, and America my home. God, please bless the world with peace, and America my home.
Yes.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yes, I think that's a wonderful. You wrote that.
I wrote that in I published that in my
Mhm.
book on page 53,
Mhm.
Beyond My Wildest Dreams.
Mhm.
In 2008,
Mhm.
I have sang that at veterans events
Mhm.
at the Radisson Hotel in
Mhm.
Scranton. I have sang it at the Genetti's Manor in Dixon City
Mhm.
at veterans events,
Mhm.
and been given virtual standing ovations
Yes.
by the veterans,
I can see.
which is an awesome
Mhm. Mhm.
honor to me.
Yes.
And I believe every word of that song.
Now, Jack, you joined the sanctuary community here, right?
About 4 years ago.
About 4 years
About 4
ago,
or 5
right?
years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm very, Lord of Schwartz actually
Yeah.
invited me to sanctuary meetings
Mhm.
down in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Mhm.
That's where my start.
And that was some time before that.
And that was some time before. Yeah, that's right. And then at one of those meetings is when Mr. Sam Lackey, who was very active in Ambassadors for Peace at that time, gave me the award.
Mhm.
And I actually missed the first day of the deer season to go down to Atlantic City to receive that award.
Mhm.
My nephews, the people who know me, couldn't believe that I would take a deer season, the first day of the deer season off. I remember a statement my
You're a
nephew.
hunter and a fisherman and an outdoorsman, aren't you?
It's been the best part of my life. I like to tell people I hunted, fished, and scuba dived around the world and wasted the rest of my life. And I can say that pretty honestly. My book and my website pretty much prove that. My website is JACKS, wildlifedreams.com.
Okay, Jack, so that's JACKS, wildlife dreams.com. Okay.
Yeah. And the website is far more comprehensive, actual than the book. And I often tell people too that the book is absolutely true. I wrote it when I actually had a memory. Now I occasionally tell people that I'll go blank for a minute or two, and I'll tell people that my train of thought has just gone off the track, which happens. Unfortunately, it's going to get worse.
Well, before we started, you were telling me that actually you've been fishing all night.
Yes, I'm very tired.
Last night, you spent the night fishing last night.
We went to Island City, New York, and we fished on a party boat with 60 people on it. That's the biggest crowd I've ever seen on a boat, and it was the Island City Current 3 boat, and I met the captain. I met the captains and the mates, and a lot of people caught fish. Myself and my friend that went down with me, Danny, from out off of 590. I can't think of the exact town now.
That's all right.
He went. We went, and the two of us did not land a fish, but the people right around us did. Some beautiful striped bass.
So were you fishing in Long Island Sound, or where is that?
We were fishing Long Island Sound, yes.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. So, but with 60 people in a boat, maybe there weren't enough fish to go around.
Well, there were lots of bunker jumping around later in the evening, and bunker is the primary food fish of a bluefish, and striped bass. To catch large striped bass, sometimes you use live bunker. But I have guided 7 years in Alaska for salmon and trout, and I have guided in Quebec, Canada at a different period of time for a summer for northern pike and walleyes. So when I tell people that fishing, when a fish is big enough to take the drag and you bring him back, and he takes the drag and you bring him back, that's about as enjoyable as anything I do. And I played numerous fish for more than an hour when I was fishing the ocean. And I know a marlin I played for an hour and 40 minutes and didn't land it. I was trying to catch him on 30-pound test line. That was at Salinas, Ecuador. I did manage to catch 5 striped marlin down there in one day, and I missed that many more. And I caught halibut in Alaska up to 175 pounds. Oh God, I fished in Brazil for peacock bass and paella and picus and piranhas. That's on the Xingu River in east central Brazil. And I've also been a professional hunting guide in the state of Wyoming for mule deer and antelope. I've guided for 25 mule deer and more antelope than that, and I've never shot either one. When I was hunting on Kodiak Island, my first guide for brown bear, my first professionally guided big game hunt, my hunter Joe Want from Fairbanks, Alaska, who is still alive and still there. That was in 1973, but he told me that guiding was the ultimate hunting. And it was about 40 years later where I became a guide and realized just how right he was. So, but the hunting, I wouldn't even want to think about a life where I didn't hunt and fish and scuba dive. I later learned to scuba dive. And I'd like to point out that I scuba dived at first at Bonaire, Captain Don's Habitat in Bonaire. Then I went on a boat in a sea fever to Florida Keys. And then we went across from the Florida Keys to the Bahama Island, drove Bimini, the famous author that wrote Island in the Stream. We went to his home. I apologize. This is my train of thought going off the track again.
Okay, that's fine.
Very, very famous author. He later committed suicide. But he wrote the book. I've met a number of great authors of different books that I know are true. Dan Heiner wrote 4 fly fishing books on Alaska, and Dan Heiner wrote the back part of my book, an introduction. I'm very honored by having met and known Dan Heiner. He traveled all over Alaska fly fishing as a fly fisherman. His book is one of his books is Fly Fishing Alaska's Wild Rivers, which you can locate in Barnes and Noble stores today. I would very much like to have another edition of my book printed. I'm hoping to get that done.
So, Jack, why did you decide to join the sanctuary community?
Oh, all right. Well, as I said, Lord Schwartz invited me to go to those meetings, and to be honest, at the time, I saw an opportunity where I could sell a few books, but I had no idea that within a month or two later, I would be given an Ambassador for Peace Award, which I considered at the time the highest possible award I could ever get in my lifetime. But as I said, I'm not satisfied with just a piece of paper. I'm actually trying to promote world peace in a lot of different ways. But
now you're really an integral part of the sanctuary community. You come to church every Sunday. I think almost every Sunday anyway. And I know that you do a lot of activities here with our congregation. So how did you go from being an ambassador for peace to being such an active part of our congregation?
Well, when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
I had intentions. I had started down the road to being a Presbyterian minister.
Mm-hmm.
For the first 22 years of my life, I was in church every Sunday, sitting next to my parents. By going through Sunday schools and learning about the Bible, our Sunday school teachers taught us. At one time, I feel that I knew the Bible almost as well as young Jin does now, Sean. And I was going down that road, and then after a while, I fell away from the in-house church. I began to believe, and I still believe actually, that you can talk to God anywhere at any time. God is on your shoulder, and God resides in your heart. One thing I like to tell anybody is that I believe I can prove beyond any shadow of a doubt to any reasonable person that God resides in the heart of all men. As humans spread across this planet, some communities forgot that there were humans in other parts of the planet.
Okay, well, let's keep the focus on you. How did you?
Okay.
I'm interested to know how you made that transition from ambassador to peace to being an active part of our community here.
Well, that was I think just by when I walk in this church.
That was about 4 years. 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, about 4 years ago. When I first started coming into this church, I was having some physical problems. I was coming down with colon cancer, and so now because of the scar tissues from 2 different colon cancer operations, which is gone, by the way. Mm-hmm. But when I'd come into this church, I would feel the presence of God here, and I would deep breathe. I would invite God into my body, which I believe anybody that's praying should consider doing this. As you're praying, invite God into. I believe sometimes when I'd be up here on the church, I'd feel the presence of God just going through every cell in my body. The colon cancer is gone. I've survived 3 or 4 different bowel obstructions. I'm literally.
Did you ask the King to pray for you?
Oh yes, yeah, I definitely did, Sean. I've had numerous people here in the church tell me that they prayed for me too at that time. Pierre, for one, actually came to my hospital bed. And Sean visited me in the Moses Taylor Hospital in Scranton, Pennsylvania, while I was there, right after I started here. I met Sean praying for people in Sam's Club, the local Sam's Club here in Dixon City. One Sunday I was up there, and him and Jan and them were up there praying for people. And I walked over and I whispered in his ear. I said, "You look familiar to me." And he turned around. He said, "Oh, you allow us to pray?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'll allow you to pray for me." And then he prayed for a very good friend of mine, John Walton, who works in Sam's Club. And I told Sean, I told John at the time that you just met 2 of the best people in this world, Sean and Jan.
So why did they look familiar to you? Had you met them before?
Oh yeah, I had met them here at the church.
Oh, I see.
This was after.
I see.
A little bit after I started coming here regularly.
Okay.
But I was kind of kidding him that he looked familiar, but and I felt very honored, and that they prayed on that particular day. In the next hour or 2 after I met them there, they prayed for numerous other people.
So they were just at Sam's Club, Sam's Club, going up to people and asking, "Can I pray for you?" And if the person said okay, then the king and queen were then praying for the people there at Sam's Club.
That's exactly what they were doing. They were spreading their ministry and asking God to help individual people. I have to credit God and very good medical people for eliminating colon cancer. I had when I was in a couple of years ago, I got hurt. I got hit by a car, and they life flighted me into CMC Medical Center off of Route 402 out here in Pike County. And I think when I was in the helicopter, I told the helicopter when they were transferring me out of the helicopter, I told them that I had been in helicopters before, but I enjoyed it more. One thing I do that works very, very well for me. No matter what the disaster in my life is, I try to think about something funny, and I know that there's another disaster that won't be too far behind it. But the fact is, I believe that I'm living proof that God takes care of Jack very, very well, and has all his life.
Yes, he has.
He has. There isn't any question. If you look at my book and you read, just look at my website. And I don't know how anybody could do that and say that God hasn't blessed Jack Harris's life many times in many different ways. And I'm asking him to keep doing that.
Okay. All right. Let's we'll hear more from Jack Harris later in the program today. But let's go to our Chunseung Rima right now. I really think that Jack is the kind of person that the Tocqueville is talking about. You're a frontiersman.
I am old school, that's for sure.
Yeah, you should. That's certainly true. And I think you're the kind of frontier Christian who spread the gospel. That's wonderful.
I want to enjoy my life. I want the people around me I want to enjoy my life. I want the people around me to enjoy theirs. I always try to inject humor. I love to play with words. There are many poems in my book that were written about the incidences, the hunting and fishing that I've done. And they're all on my website.
Okay. All right. And that Jack's
JacksWildlifeDreams.com.
JacksWildlifeDreams.com. So there's an S after Jack and an S after Dream. Okay. Let's go to we'll hear more from Jack later on. But let's go to our Chunseung Rima this morning. Centering on I'm on page 1327 in my e-edition here. Centering on the family of true parents, the Unification Church has climbed back up from where humanity had fallen through indemnity on the tribal level. We have climbed back over the horizon, and through the 40-year period from 1952 to 1992, we have passed into the era of the global blessing. The blessing can now be held internationally. We have reached a certain vertical standard concerning the spirit world, and from there it could cross over to the horizontal international era. By doing so, we were able to bless 360,000 couples in 1995, eventually leading to 40 million couples on June 13th, 1998. These blessings of 30,000, 360,000, and 3.6 million couples were held in the international era. And the 3.6 million couples was the peak. On reaching this, we could then enter a world of equality. Right, so this is Father speaking in 1999 on January 2nd. All right, so this is the section on the importance of the 3.6 million couples. All right, today is actually a very important day for us because President Trump was in Quebec. Actually, at this time, he is still in Quebec, Canada, attending the G7 meeting.
I did not know that.
Yes, and then later on today, in a few hours, actually in about 5 hours, he's leaving there, and he's not coming back to the United States. Instead, he's going directly to Singapore.
To the meeting with
Kim Jong-un, yes.
Yes. North Korean leader.
Right.
Very, very important event.
Here, I'm sorry, I cannot share my screen with you this morning because of technical things, but according to the president's schedule, He's leaving the G7 meeting at 10:35 this morning, and he's going to a Canadian military base, I imagine by helicopter, although it doesn't say. And then at let's see, he arrives at that Canadian base at 11:40, and then 11:50 he's scheduled to leave this Canadian forces base en route to Singapore. So he's not returning to the U.S. He's going directly there, and so he's skipping the last session of the G7 meeting. This is the section of the G7 meeting that covers a climate change. He's not going to be there for that. This morning in the G7, they're from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, they have a G7 and Gender Equality Advisor Council breakfast from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 9:30, there's a signing of the scroll. Not sure what that is, but anyway, all the leaders are going to sign some kind of a scroll. And then 9:30 to 10:30, they say is a working session, a G7 working session. And the leaders will participate in that, 10:30. And then that will be the end of 10:30 is when President Trump is going to get up and leave. And then at 10:45, they're going to start another working session, this one on the climate change and clean energy. But President Trump is not going to be there for that.
I'd like to say something.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Just 1 second. Mm-hmm. It is my honest opinion that Donald Trump has tried to do everything that he said he was going to do before the election. Mm-hmm. And I do believe he's going to grow the American economy tremendously in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and already the American economy is growing tremendously. Okay, I'm sorry, folks, for giving you seasickness by moving this camera back and forth, but we have to do this.
Okay, well, one of the things that I love about Donald Trump mm-hmm. is the fact that he is one of the most recent president. He is almost always saying, thank God for this, God mm-hmm. for this. He's very, very God-oriented. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that's kind of, if I could do one thing in this world, I would bring America back to the ideals of the founding fathers of this country. There was no more religious man in the world at the time than George Washington, who totally believed and asked God for help and many times. Another one I believe is Abraham Lincoln later would be another very strong supporter. If there's another thing I'd like to do, I honestly believe that we should bring God back into the schools with the Lord's Prayer. We recited the Lord's Prayer every day at school before we started our classes.
Was this in public school?
Yes. Yes. And I honestly, such a very, very small group of people were able to pull that out of our school. Mm-hmm. America is and always had been a God-based country.
Yes. And de Tocqueville mentioned that also in his Democracy in America. Yes, the role of Christianity. Yes.
Well, I'm asking for as much help as I can get. Reverend Moon became a successful messenger of God through the help of many, many people. Mm-hmm. And I'm asking for the same kind of help. I am not qualified as a minister, but I am trying to be a minister for God throughout this world. Mm-hmm. Everywhere in this world, there are far more good people than there are bad people. This is one of the reasons that I really honestly believe that all the countries should ask for gun rights. When good people have guns, there are no problems. Bad guys don't go. Bad guys go to gun-free zones. That's a safety zone for murders. That's all that is. The entire country of France was a gun-free zone. The police had to go to their the bad guys with the guns got in there. That very small group of bad guys got into France, smuggled the guns in somehow, and started walking around shooting people with everybody they could see almost for 2 hours before the police could go to the barracks, get their guns, and confront them. In America, that can never happen. Wayne LaPierre's good guy with a gun would have stopped every mass slaying in this country. The first shot would have identified the shooter. The second one would have maybe been unavoidable. The third shot is Wayne LaPierre's good guy with a gun. No mass slayings ever from that point.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree that President Trump is doing everything he can, that he's growing the economy. The unemployment rate now is down to 3.8%. Although part of that is because some people are retiring and taking Social Security, which is. But of course, the problem is that the economy, though, the economy in the short term is doing well, but the overall picture of the economy is actually quite poor because we have $23 trillion in debt, and we can't, we can't live forever like that. I mean, something's got to happen. There's going to be a bubble. There is a bubble, and it's going to bust.
The bubble will break. The bubble will, that's a tragedy of America.
Yeah, and it'll be blamed on Donald Trump, perhaps, but that is something that's been building. It's been building for many years through Republican and Democratic administrations. And successive Federal Reserve Board chairmen have warned about this. Greenspan warned about it, saying this can't go on forever. Congress has to do something about it. Janet Yellen warned about it. Something's got to be done about this. But nothing was done about it. In fact, not only was nothing done about it, but actually things were made worse. So now, that's what's going on right now. Let's see. I wanted to go here on to an article. Let's see. I probably better go to this article on my phone. But no. Well, let's do a couple of Donald Trump tweets right now. Before he went to the G7, he tweeted, "I'm heading for Canada and the G7 for talks that will mostly center on the long-time unfair trade practices against the United States. From there, I go to Singapore and talks with North Korea on denuclearization. Won't be talking about the Russia witch hunt hoax for a while." Then he tweeted his condolences to the families of a serviceman who was killed in Somalia recently. Yeah, and he hasn't been tweeting for a while, I guess, because he's probably packing his bags right now to go to get on the Air Force One in a few hours to go to Singapore. Yeah. But I did have one article here that I pulled up on my computer. Let me go ahead and let's do this. So this is about the G7 and what's been going on there. The G7 is basically 4 European countries. That's UK, France, Germany, and Italy, plus US, Canada, and Japan. And Russia was a part of this, so it was a G8 until about 2014. Russia was kicked out because it annexed the Crimea. Yeah. And saying this time that Russia ought to be allowed back in, but Russia itself is not so interested because they're actually getting closer to China now, and they're working with China. Kind of the West has been pushing Russia in that direction, which is unfortunate because the United States and Russia need to be working together. But let's see what is going on here. The United States and the European Union will establish a dialogue on trade within the next 2 weeks, a French official said on Friday, signaling a modest step forward for bitterly divided allies at a Group of 7 summit in Canada. U.S. trade partners have been furious over President Donald Trump's decision last week to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, the European Union, and Mexico as part of its America First agenda. Some countries have retaliated with their own levies on U.S. imports. The principle of a dialogue was agreed this afternoon, the French official told reporters. Everyone agreed, including President Trump. While G7 leaders confronted Trump with a slew of data on imports and exports in a bid to sway his thinking, Trump countered his own numbers and held his position that the United States was at a disadvantage on international trade, an official who followed the talk said. And actually, in the president's tweets here, if you go back a little ways, he gives a tweet here that says, Canada charges the U.S. a 270% tariff on dairy products. They didn't tell you that, did they? Not fair to our farmers, President Trump says. So that's the kind of numbers that are going back and forth. But Trump struck a more affable tone after a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, saying the French leader was helping work out trade issues. Somehow Macron seems to have be able to talk with Trump that in a way that other people are not able to. Something's going to happen. I think it will be very positive, Trump said, without giving details. Macron said it was possible to advance the trade issues that have split the U.S. and its allies. I think our trade, there is a way to progress altogether, he told reporters after his meeting with Trump. I saw the willingness of all the sides to find agreements and have a win-win approach for our peoples, our workers, and our middle classes. German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Friday floated an idea to set up a way to resolve trade disputes between the United States and its allies. An official described Merkel's suggestion as a shared assessment and dialogue mechanism, but gave no further details. It was unclear if the technical talks were part of her initiative. The proposal was supported by other leaders present. The official said European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker offered to visit Washington for an assessment of EU-US trade to help resolve the dispute, an official said. Expectations for a major breakthrough on trade at the summit, however, remain low. While with U.S. allies focused on avoiding rupturing the G7, which in its 42-year history has tended to seek consensus on major issues. It's highly unlikely there will be a final communique, G7 official said on condition of anonymity. Merkel said it was not clear whether the group would issue a final directive, adding that failure to do so would be an honest reflection of the lack of agreement among Canada, the United States, Japan, Britain, Italy, France, and Germany. The EU is also attending the summit. Trump had set a combative tone before leaving Washington on Friday, saying he was going to deal with the unfair trade practices of other G7 members, but he was more affable after meeting Macron and Trudeau, swapping jokes with the latter before the media, though neither budged on their trade positions. We had really a very good relationship, very special, the U.S. president said of Macron, a day after the two leaders had exchanged terse messages on Twitter. We have little tests every once in a while when it comes to trade. That was President Trump. Yeah, Merkel and Trump also had a brief conversation at the summit, but no bilateral meeting. Trump's America First message to allies has hardened since he brought hardline National Security Advisor John Bolton onto his team. Trump plans to leave the summit 4 hours earlier than originally planned to fly to Singapore to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the White House said. G7 chiefs have largely praised Trump for his efforts to stabilize the Korean Peninsula, but they are unhappy he pulled out of an international agreement to limit Iran's nuclear ambitions. Well, actually, he pulled out of it because that agreement did not limit Iran's nuclear ambitions. Yeah. Canada and the EU have denounced the U.S. tariffs, and Ottawa has proposed levies on a range of U.S. goods next month, while the EU has pledged its own retaliatory measures. British Prime Minister Theresa May on Friday warned both Trump and the EU of the dangers of entering a tit-for-tat trade war over tariffs, urging both sides to instead focus on China's excess steel production. That's a good point, by the way, by Theresa May. China's excess steel production is causing a lot of problems in the steel market, world steel market. Canada Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland said her country will not change its mind when it comes to the illegal application of tariffs. The spat has financial markets worried about tit-for-tat escalation. Investors are also concerned about the future of the North America Free Trade Agreement, which Trump had threatened to terminate. Canada and Mexico, the other members of the 1994 pact, have been frustrated by the slow pace of talks to renegotiate NAFTA. A Canadian official said Trump and Trudeau discussed accelerating NAFTA talks. Relations with Russia also became an issue at the summit after Trump on Friday said the country should be allowed to again attend meetings with the G7, an idea that did not gain much traction at the meeting and was not formally raised. Russia was suspended from the group in 2014 because of its annexation of Crimea from Ukraine. Trump said Russia should be readmitted, but even Moscow seemed to reject that suggestion. Merkel said EU countries at the summit agreed that the conditions to readmit Russia had not been met. Trump's presidency has been clouded by a federal investigation into alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election and possible collusion by his campaign. Well, possible collusion, I mean, come on, after a year and a half, they still haven't found it. So how do Reuters keeps saying possible? These are phrases that reporters just throw in. They're kind of throwaway phrases that just basically increase the word count. But Moscow and Trump have denied the allegations.
I've got a comment on it.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to put it on.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Go ahead.
Of course, I would have no idea if Russia interfered with the American election. But if they did, it is probably because they have known Hillary Clinton many years, and they didn't want any part of her either. They consider her a threat to world peace. A Russian general said, if you want war, vote for Clinton. If you want peace, vote for Donald Trump. I think Mr. Putin would rather deal with a straight-up, stand-up guy like Donald Trump than whatever Hillary Clinton actually is.
Yes. And the United States has interfered in a few elections of our own, haven't they?
We wouldn't do that. Of course we wouldn't do that.
As a matter of fact, the CIA has done a few coups d'etats around the world, actually, so more than just interfering in elections.
There isn't any question. It was just their turn.
But there are two things here. One did the Russians include or involve themselves somehow in the 2016 election? That's one thing. The other thing is, did they collude with the Trump campaign? They're two different things.
Yes.
So I think the idea that they tried to influence the 2016 election appears to be possibly true, because through Facebook ads and stuff like that. Whether the Trump administration or the Trump campaign and the Putin Kremlin work together, that is what Mueller is trying to prove, and that is where he has fallen flat. And Reuters keeps saying possible collusion, but they're demanding that Trump prove a negative, right? You can never really prove a negative. That I did not do this. How are you going to prove that? So that is where the media keeps trying to find something.
For me personally, it was far more important that Trump win the election, and I considered Hillary Clinton planned to destroy the Second Amendment. Openly said she would bring down the NRA. Hillary Clinton's election would have been an American freedom disaster. Thank God, I believe that God did not allow America's freedoms to fall. And that is why Donald Trump is president of the United States. Enough of people realized that she wanted to kill the Constitution of the United States.
And I agree.
She would have been quite simply an American freedom disaster. Donald Trump, we have at least 4 and the gun issue has to charge the hill. No matter how much we're doing to bring young people into the shooting sports, we're not doing enough. Well, in every country, every city, every state, there are far more good people than there are bad people. Everywhere the gun laws are the strictest, the crime rate is the highest. That's because the bad guys know that the good guys can't shoot back. No bad guy will ever give up his gun, and most of the bad guys that have guns stole them. But these gun-free zones, they simply are the bad guys with the guns. They search out gun-free zones because they know that there's nobody there to shoot back. The good guy with the gun will walk around a gun-free zone. The bad guy goes right into the middle of it. I got lots of time, do lots of shooting, and there's nobody here to stop me. And maybe I'll get away with it. He's thinking maybe he'll get out the back door and walk away.
Yeah, actually, the shooter in Parkland, Florida, actually disposed of the gun and walked out of the school with the students who were evacuating, and the police actually caught up with him in a neighborhood that was some distance away from the school. Yeah, that's right.
Well, the red flags on that young man were everywhere.
Yes,
it was. I personally believe that he knew somebody knew him in the police or the sheriff's organization. It said, "Oh, he's a good kid. He'll be okay. He's not going to do anything." And it kind of bogged down a proper response. There must be, in my opinion, there must be restriction, background searches. I really think that's very, very essential in this day and age. It will not eliminate all problems. That's an impossibility. But it will certainly reduce the number of bad people having guns.
Well, I read an article this morning. I'll try to go back to it. But Florida, for a year, was the background check system was not operating. In other words, people were getting guns without background checks for a year.
Yeah.
Because, you know why? Someone forgot a password. Let me try to bring up that article here just a minute. Let me see where that is. Let me go into here and see Florida background. Here we go. This is an article in New York Magazine. Says that Florida, I just clicked on the headline and the article is coming up here in just a minute. Florida didn't do background checks on gun sales for a year, is the but this is an illustration of how background checks really don't work. They're just sort of feel good. They're just a feel good laws. Even though New York Magazine is a leftist magazine, but here, if there's one place in the South where it's not a good idea for even a Republican politician to look sloppy about very basic gun regulation, it's probably Florida, home to both the June 16 Pulse massacre in Orlando, June 2016 massacre, and the Parkland massacre in February of this year. State Agricultural Commissioner Adam Putnam probably figured that out when Parkland survivors launched a boycott of the Publix grocery chain for its lavish support of Putnam's campaign after the candidate proudly tweeted his slavish support for the gun lobby. Slavish support. Anyway, this is New York Magazine, right? So let's get here to here we go. For more than a year, the state of Florida failed to conduct national background checks on tens of thousands of applications for concealed weapons permits, potentially allowing drug addicts or people with a mental illness to carry firearms in public. A previously unreported Office of Inspector General investigation found that in February 2016, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services stopped using an FBI crime database called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This is the NICS system, that ensures applicants who want to carry a gun do not have a disqualifying history in other states. The employee in charge of the background checks could not log into the system, the investigator learned. The problem went unresolved until discovered by another worker in March 2017, meaning that for more than a year, applications got approved without the required background check. So apparently this guy was just approving applications without actually going into the NICS system at all. Here, where's the, but let's see, where does it mention the password? Let me do a search in the past. Yeah. So anyway, this article is attacking the commissioner, that is the agriculture commissioner, for not noticing that this was happening. But anyway, this shows that the NICS system is really broken anyway. That these background checks are really are not working. Just to let you know, just for people to know that Florida, for a year, from 2016, early 2016 to early 2017, was issuing concealed carry permits without checking the FBI database, because the person who was supposed to be doing those checks couldn't log into the FBI database, and he couldn't log in because he couldn't remember the password. Yeah. And this went on until another worker discovered it a year later. So that's kind of, okay, so why are we doing this in the first place type of thing,
So, as I said, I personally believe they should be done. Mm-hmm. I have never had any problem with background checks, because I know that I've never done anything that should, as far as injuring other people or even thinking about injuring other people. I've never even, as I said, I want people to enjoy their lives, and I want to enjoy my own. And I carried guns for many, many years. During the time when I was carrying guns, I never met a person I would have even thought about showing. I believe in carrying concealed. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in open carry, for the simple reason that if somebody is going to start something with someone that's carrying open, they're going to be the first target. Right. By carrying concealed, I have a surprise element. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The first shot going anywhere else but at me, I'd have time, a little bit of a surprise to respond. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John Carrera in his videos on active self-protection talks a lot about wait your turn in the case of a situation where the bad guy comes into the situation with most cases with the gun already drawn. Yeah. So the good guys have to wait. Yeah. Until the bad guy is distracted or not focusing on them, right. And then pull the gun and put him down.
This is the preference. There is something I saw not too long ago, and I was told it was down in Brazil. Mm-hmm. A guy walks into a group of ladies. This could have been the beginning of a mass slaying. Mm-hmm. But one of the ladies that was there had a gun. She turned her back, she dug into her purse, she turned around, and she nailed the guy right there. And then she stood on top of him, waiting for the police to come. Well, I would. This is why more women should get in, learn proper, safe handling of gun, and learn to carry.
Yes. That was a video, yes, that the king showed during Sunday service. I remember, and I think the lady was an off-duty military policewoman, Yeah, but she certainly handled the situation very well. Yes.
Wayne LaPierre's good girl with a gun is the scenario there. Is how to look at that. There again, when good people have guns, there are no problems. That may have been a mass slaying.
Could have been, yes.
But the good guy with the gun, the good woman with a gun, stopped it instantly.
Yeah,
instantly.
The bad guy was actually pointing his gun at a group of women with children because it was in front of a school, and the women, I think, were dropping off their children or something like that, or attending an event at the school. I'm not sure, but there was a group of women and children actually. And then one of the women in the group, though, was this off-duty military policewoman who, as you said, took her gun out.
She turned it back.
She concealed her draw very well, and then took care of him. Yes, and put him down. Put him down, and
where he belonged to be. That was the right thing, and that should happen far more often in this country.
But we want to be very careful that we don't carry guns we never carry guns to threaten people or to use against the good people, but we only carry guns to protect people, ourselves and the people around us.
All the years that I carried guns, I never met a person that needed to know that I was carrying a gun. I like to consider myself the good guy with the gun. Have no desire to hurt anybody, but I will defend. It gives me the option of defending somebody who really, really needs help now. In most cases, the police do a very good job. I'm a very firm supporter of the police in the Scranton, especially in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area where I live. But the response time with gun, where a gun is in play, the response time is far too long. If more good people had guns, the response time was cut down dramatically, and it definitely is a positive. No gun ever killed a human being. Not one gun ever killed a human being. Only people do that.
Yes.
And in almost all cases, it's the bad guys with the gun.
Yeah, with the recent shooting in Santa Fe, Texas, the police said they responded in 4 minutes, which is pretty good. 4-minute response is pretty good.
Yes.
But in 4 minutes, 10 people were killed and 10 others were injured.
Yeah.
So, yes, there has to be a faster response, not in terms of minutes, but in terms of seconds.
One of the worst things that happened, and it was in the Florida incident. They got to the school. They heard the gunfire. They stood around outside saying, "Well, we'll get him when he comes out." That was a total law breakdown. It's unimaginable that sheriff's deputies or police officers would not go into the school while the gunfire was.
Yeah, and it was actually officers from a neighboring town that finally came and went into the school.
Is that right?
Yeah, while the Parkland officers remained outside the school. Yes, and actually the king, by the way, is going to be in Florida on June 30th to participate in a rally and demonstration calling for the resignation of the sheriff there, who is still in his office. He's still in office. So they're going to be calling for his resignation.
Well, the individual officers that were there, the first ones on the scene are the ones that should be punished for that. I mean,
well, but they're saying, hey, we did nothing wrong. We did our job. We called in, we said, hey, there's a mass shooting going on, and this is what the guy looks like. And we'll wait here. So they say we did nothing wrong. We did our job.
Well, they flat out they're wrong.
Yes, that's right.
They should have been in that school instantly. If a shot was being fired, they should have been. But what would have stopped it, of course, is the good teachers having their arm.
Yes.
in a lot of these schools,
trained teachers.
Very well trained teachers.
Yeah. The chief made the point that if you give guns to all the teachers, some of those teachers are going to give the gun to the bad guy. So here, take my gun. You're out of bullets. Here, take my gun.
Or the bad guys will steal them from the
yes.
That can happen too.
So they have to be well trained.
They have to be well trained. It has to be what they should be in every school. There are very, very good teachers in every school that can be trained to do this very well. And that is essential to keep. I've heard it stated, we have to harden our schools. There, in every school, there are a number of teachers that can be trained to handle this very well, and the response time is cut down from several minutes to seconds.
Yes,
and it makes a huge difference.
That's right. Yes, when seconds matter, the police are only minutes away. That's a problem.
That's a very good statement. That's true.
Okay. I wanted to go to another article now on another subject. That is the ongoing witch hunt, basically. If I could turn to the ongoing witch hunt for a minute, because now a man who has been the head of security for the Senate Intelligence Committee for almost 30 years has been indicted and I think arrested for he's been arrested for leaking information to reporters, and this is an example of how people these career that we call the deep state that are just trying to that is actually what's been going on. We've known it, but they're finally beginning to lock them up. Trump, speaking to reporters at the White House before departing for the G7 summit in Quebec, called the case, "It's a very important leaker," unquote. It could be a terrific thing, Trump said. "I'm a big believer in freedom of the press, but I'm also a believer in classified information has to remain classified. The extent to which the case involves classified information remained uncertain." The chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Senator Richard Burr, and the panel's ranking Democrat, Senator Mark R. They've been noting that the charges do not appear to include anything related to the mishandling of classified information, but adding that the committee takes this matter extremely seriously. But they already said that the information that was leaked was in classified documents. So I don't know how they could say such a thing. James Wolfe, the former security director, charged with lying about his contacts with a series of journalists, including his New York Times, appeared in court Friday after his arrest. Which became a frenzy over the last 14 months. Contained in the indictment, which refers to page merely as Mail 1, are true, then both pages 2013 contact with a Russian intelligence official and his subsequent subpoena to appear before the Senate's probe into Russian election interference appeared in the press after Wolfe leaked classified documents he had access to by virtue of the position as a security chief. So you're gonna. Oh yes, okay, all right. I see how to do it now. And the other journalist discussion, he's only being charged with. And I guess that's why they can joint statement saying that he's not being charged with leaking that information. But obviously, that's the whole point. A DOJ spokesman confirmed Wolfe's arrest, and this keeps jumping. In a statement. In a statement released Friday afternoon, in the U.S. District Court for the District. I'm not sure why it does that. It's got to stop. Federal magistrate judges do not hear cases, but among other things, they set terms of release. As a result, Wolf did not enter a plea, but was merely advised of the charges against him before being released and assigned a court date at which he will presumably answer to the charges. Mr. Wolf was released on personal recognizance under a number of conditions, including his passport and a prohibition of travel outside the District of Columbia and Maryland. The DOJ statement reads, he is next scheduled to appear at 1:45 p.m. on Tuesday, June 12, 2018, in the U.S. That hearing will be before Magistrate Judge Robin M. Merriweather. Wolf and arrest represent the first delivery on Attorney General Jeff Sessions' pledge to root out leakers in the federal government, which early as a career served as the Senate's Intelligence Committee security chief for 30 years. So since the time he was 27, I guess, he was doing to the president represents what some have come to refer to as the American deep state and its animus toward. Yeah. All right. So this is the deep state. Jeff Sessions finally in that. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to the Drudge Report now. And start going through some of the Drudge Report to the screen right now, and as soon as I'm going through that. Okay. As the G7 meetings are at the top left of Drudge, and then Drudge is a fan apparently of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So his main headline is "Agony of Defeat," because they were defeated in the NBA Finals 4-0. They were swept out, I guess, and so that is Drudge's personal preference. Bill Clinton defends Al Franken. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, he says. Bill Clinton maybe ought to remain quiet in this hashtag #MeToo era, but he doesn't want to do that. Interesting. Third time, Manafort hit with a fresh indictment. Giuliani trying to influence perception of Mueller's probe. Suicide now the 10th leading cause of death in USA. The Air Force grounds B-1 bomber fleet. That's very concerning because we need those B-1 bombers. We may need them very soon if things get hot on the Korean Peninsula. Facebook gave companies access to user records well after they claimed to cut them off. Apple warns suppliers of 20% drop in iPhone parts orders. That would seem to indicate that Apple is expecting a huge drop in iPhone sales. Drone surveillance state becomes real. Okay, we can go into that later on. Iran defiant, and as a Drudge tries to refresh here, as it holds day of anti-Israel protests. Gaza set for more unrest. 4,000 Palestinians burn tires. So things are continuing to simmer and boil in the Middle East. Nancy, ? Pelosi freezes during simple math problem. French opposition media cry foul over fake news bill. This is a law being considered in France that would outlaw fake news. But who's going to decide what is fake news? That's the problem. I've lived in dictatorships. I lived in Korea when it was under a dictatorship, and I saw how the government outlawed what they then called yuonbyo, or basically rumors and, it was basically fake news. That's what they were outlawing. And people were arrested for repeating things, not only in the press, but also even in conversations, information that was unfavorable to the government. And anything that was unfavorable to the government was considered to be fake news. So this kind of law that's being considered in France would definitely take us in that kind of a direction. There's bad, there is reporters get stuff wrong, sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose. But the free market needs to sort that out. That's why consumers of news, that's you and me, need to know how to read the news, and take everything with a grain of salt. Take everything with a grain of salt. Don't believe everything you read. In fact, believe very little of what you believe of what you read. I think is a good way to do a good rule of thumb anyway. A university prohibits harsh text messages. I don't want to offend anyone, right? A weekend at Triple Crown hopeful justified run in history, and it turns out, of course, that Soros is the owner of this horse, the horse named Justified, that's running for the Triple Crown. I think doesn't that happen today? I believe so. Argentina peso plunges to new record low as a Drudge refreshes on my screen yet again. I have to wait for the new screen to come up. Okay. And let's see, just 2 months of stress can affect male sperm. There you go. Relax, guys, relax. Brazen couple caught romping on gravestone in daylight. Perhaps that guy could have used a little more stress. Let's see, Krauthammer. Yes, this is very sad. Weeks to Live. Yes, Charles Krauthammer published a letter yesterday in which he revealed that he's battling with cancer, and his doctors now give him just weeks to live. That's a very unfortunate, because he's been a very incisive and smart commentator. But yes, he's not so old, but he will be missed for sure. Iranian officials admits for first time in aiding 9/11 terrorists. U.S. pulls 2 more. So why did we go after Iraq? It was Iran that was aiding the 9/11 terrorists. USA pulls 2 more from Cuba, new potential health cases. Yes, apparently there's some kind of a sonic weapon being used against American diplomats in Cuba and also in China. They haven't really told us what is going on. Maybe, I think the U.S. officials know more than what they're telling us. There's some kind of a sonic weapon, it seems. Canadian officials traveled to California and Florida to stem the wave of immigrants heading their way. I guess they want the immigrants to stay in the U.S. Trump, no White House invitation for LeBron James or Steph Curry. Yeah, they both said they don't want to go. That's fine. Don't go. Jodie Foster, much more comfortable having robots own guns than humans. Well, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a very bad idea.
Why is that a bad idea, Jack?
Computer technology. I think that computers only know what is put into them, and if the wrong people program them, they could be much more efficient and deadly. They would almost certainly never miss.
Did you see the movie of the 2001 Space Odyssey?
I don't remember.
Towards the end, where Hal, the computer, refuses to open the pod bay doors.
Oh,
yeah. While the guy, the human being, is outside of the spacecraft.
Yeah.
He's been doing something outside the spacecraft. He's trying to get back in, and he says, "Open the pod bay door, Hal." And Hal says, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that." And so robots with guns. I think anyone who's seen that movie I would know that robots with guns is not a good idea. Because
No.
robots, with artificial intelligence will say, the king has often pointed this out. They will say, well, there are problems in the world. What are the causes of the problems? Well, they are caused by human beings. Therefore, to get rid of the problems, all we have to do is get rid of human beings. Da 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 da.
Well, that's
that would not be a good idea.
No, not.
So let's not give robots guns. All right.
Well, one of the things about the ambassador for peace, we're kind of back on that a little bit, but I personally don't believe that the leaders of America, the leaders of China, the leaders of Russia, consider nuclear weapons an option. This is one of the reasons that I say the insanity of war is nearly at its end. It's for the simple reason that if 200 nuclear weapons exploded on this planet, high-yield nuclear weapons exploded on this planet in a week's time, there would be the air would be the radiation would just almost sterilize the earth. Anything more than the 200 and what if you use figures that I'm get from the American press, China has about 1,500 nuclear weapons. America may have 2,000 or a little bit more. They say that Russia has far more than that. Anything more than that 200 high-yield nuclear weapons exploded would just multiply the problem exponentially. I believe that one of the things that we're supposed to be an intelligent species. If we destroy nuclear weapons, were designed by us by supposedly intelligent species to do one thing: destroy the supposedly intelligent species on this planet. And if we succeed in doing that, we take everything else with us. Where is the intelligence in that?
Right. So, yeah, I think Jodie Foster is probably wrong that we should not give guns to
robots.
Yeah, I think maybe that should be included in the background checks. Are you a robot? So if you're a robot, then you are disqualified. Yes.
Well,
okay.
According to Jodie Foster, they are not. So I think Miss Foster should.
She makes good movies.
Yes, she was a marvelous actress. I would say yes.
A lot of these actresses and actors too, they're great as long as they keep reciting lines written for them by someone else. But when they start writing their own lines, they're not so good.
they get a bit off the track.
Yes, they do. All right. Can you get take your knee away from the desk a little bit? It shakes the camera.
Vibrating.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue with the Drudge headlines here. And I'm going to read them off my telephone so that it doesn't interrupt the internet. Bernie, our socialist ideas are winning, he says. He wants to give to everyone. Yes, and he also wants to have health care for everyone. Medicare for all, basically.
Well, one of the things I've been talking about with the one of the proudest things you'll see on my website is Veteran Supporter of the Year. Something I have been promoting, and I'd like to do it here. Here's as good a place as any, probably the best. I honestly believe that American soldier who has sustained a 70% disability defending this country, provable 70% or more disability, I believe that he should never get another medical bill. He was taking care of America when he got hurt. America should take care of him the rest of his life.
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah. All right. And let's continue here. And let's see here on Drudge. Iowa, Sanders on Medicare for all, there will be pain. You bet. That's a true statement. Iowa Republicans zero in on wealth of Democratic governor. A pet monkey attacks Home Depot employee. And Marilyn Monroe's statue near church draws ire. Southern Baptist hashtag #MeToo reckoning. Vatican seeks courageous ideas to combat priest shortage. Married women. Catholic Church is in a bad way right now.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll say something about that.
No, I don't know enough about the subject, to be honest.
Okay, $1 million Marvel memorabilia heist baffles LAPD. SeaWorld bans straws, plastic bags. Well, they're a private company. They can do that. They can do what they want. And the market will react to that. 10%, a study says 10% of people admit to checking phone during sex. We don't know anything about that, do we? Ancient teeth unlock bubonic plague secret. And Guatemala warns of falling ash as volcanic activity picks up. And families are left on their own to keep searching for the dead. Yeah, the Guatemala explosion, a lot of more attention is being paid to the Kilauea explosion in Hawaii, where no one has been killed. A lot of houses have been lost and structures have been lost, but no one's been killed. But the media is not covering the Guatemala situation, where dozens of people have been killed already. Mm-hmm. We'd like to know more about what's going on in Guatemala, but apparently we don't have too much to go on. From punk kid to 21st century tyrant, Kim Jong-un seizes his moment. Rodman headed to Singapore, will support, quote, my friends, unquote. And USA prepares to thwart Chinese spying at the summit. And an arm was found inside a massive alligator suspected of having killed a lady walking her dog. U.S. unveils a world's most powerful supercomputer. Oh, wait, there's one before that. Chinese hackers stole sensitive Navy undersea warfare plans. Indicted former Senate staffer in court. We know about that. Let's see here. Trump's tariffs on newsprint are killing newspapers, unquote. There's a question mark. Xi touts Putin ties as U.S. tensions bring them closer. Russia building giant war cloud. And museum discovers secret order to destroy Gulag data. Rural malls hit hard times, leaving shoppers adrift as more stores close. Mall traffic lane for people staring at phones. Austria to expel up to 60 imams, close 7 mosques. Kurds crack down against Islamists. Austria is cracking down. And a baby born to trans could become first person without a legal mother. Boris warns of Brexit meltdown. That's Boris Johnson. And warns of Brexit meltdown in secret tape. And 2 dogs die in hot car after the owner is arrested. All right. Let's look at this Austria story first, shall we? Let's see here. I'm going to use my phone here instead of the computer, hopefully, so that the computer can focus on the YouTube.
There is something that I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
We touched on it a little bit earlier. I wrote a different song about my personal family. My mother, my father, my mother, and my sister are deceased. And in their honor, I wrote a song or a poem called Our Family on the Hill. And this is something I would like people around the world to think about when they're thinking about their deceased friends and family. Okay, this is my personal vision of what I would like to believe is my future. As I said, my father, my sister, and my mother are deceased. There are 2 more now, myself and Mary Ann. And I want to do this song, and I'd like people to think about the people that they know and miss. And
well, this is appropriate. This is very appropriate because we're having an ancestor liberation a week from tomorrow.
Well, this is
liberation and blessing.
Well, this is how I would like people around the world, everybody, to consider this song.
Okay.
This.
Go ahead.
Dear Father, we still love you. You know we always will. Through open eyes we see you smiling on the hill. Dear Mother, we still love you. You know we always will. Through open eyes we see you smiling on the hill. Dear sister, we still love you. You know we always will. Through open eyes we see you smiling on the hill. Marianne and I are coming. Then we'll spend eternity greeting friends as they walk by, as God shows them the path to their families on the hill. I think all can look through open eyes and see their parents and their loved ones smiling. I'd like you to think that I think this is obviously true of almost everybody. I would not want to see tears when I pass. I don't want to see my family members in tears. I want to see them remembering the good times and smiling at a joke that I told or something like that. I think that far too many people don't think about the good times. They think about the loss, but they don't realize that the people who have passed would want to remember them and would want to see them smiling, not crying.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Jack. That was really beautiful. Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to segue from that into what I'm about to cover.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just make the transition.
Okay.
Just turn the camera. Now we got it covered.
I brought up this article about Austria and how Austria is shutting down mosques and expelling foreign-funded imams in a crackdown against Islamist ideology. But anyway,
not the Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
All people,
mm-hmm.
whether they're Muslims or whether they're any other race. Actually, there's only one race on this planet. You're a man, you're a woman. That is the only race that should matter to anybody at any time. But ISIS is a very, very small part of the Islamic religion. I know, and we meet and we talk to people here who are Muslim religion. Not all Muslims are bad, and not all Muslims, like anybody else. The number of poor, bad people in the Muslim race is very, very small. They're not the majority of the Muslim race, of the Muslim religion. Is a better way. Race doesn't mean anything. You're a man, you're a woman. That's your race. That's the only thing that matters. It should matter. It's not true yet, but that shouldn't go in a bag. The heaven on earth. In every country, everywhere, there's such a small minority of bad people. There are far more good people in this world than there are bad people. And the percentages are fairly consistent. I believe the percentages of bad people are fairly consistent around the world. Very, very small.
I agree with that. But I also think that we need to look at not just the people, but also the ideology. And for example, some people will say that, well, Christianity, Islam, one religion, another religion. They're basically the same, but there are fundamental differences, aren't there?
Absolutely.
And fundamentally, Islam, when you look at the ideology, not at the people, but the ideology and what is being taught, what in the original text, it is not a religion of peace. Although many of the people are good, like the majority of Islamic people, Muslim people may be good, but the ideology that they are taught, if you look at their original text, is not a religion of peace.
I had a conversation a number of years ago with a Baptist minister who is still a Baptist minister here in Pike County, and he said, "Jack, religion has never brought peace because of the ideologies that you're talking about, the idiosyncrasies in the religion, in the different religion." He said, "Religion." And that's something that stuck with me.
But Judeo-Christianity, though, especially Christianity through Jesus Christ, attempts to bring people into a close, and that relationship with God, though, does bring peace, doesn't it?
Oh, it brings peace. Yes. Brings peace to my heart. I can tell you that. As I've said before, I believe that God has watched over. And anybody that would look at my experiences, look at my website, look at my book, I don't see how anybody could say that something hasn't helped my life constantly forever. I had my train just went off the track again, but.
Okay, but let me make the point that if we talk about members of the Communist Party, we can say that most members of the Communist Party are good people. We can say that I went to China or I went to North Korea and I met members of the Communist Party, and they're good people. So we should be able to get along. But when you go beyond the people and look at the ideology of the Communist Party or of the Korean Workers' Party, it is exploitative. It is warlike, and it is a destroyer of humanity. And the same, I would say, with Islam.
Well, this one of the things I'd like to point out here. In this church on a Sunday morning, if you come to this church almost every Sunday, you walk in the door, you will meet Muhammad Adi. He was an Egyptian soldier during the war with Israel. At the time, America supported Israel, and it was my thought at the time, whatever Israel had to do to win that, I hate to say this, but kill them all. Now that I know Muhammad Adi, and if you at the same time, you'll see sitting just a few seats away from Muhammad Adi during the service here, you will see Andy, who is our tech guy here, and he was a South Korean soldier as a young man. A few seats away from him on a Sunday morning, you will see John, and I'm not sure the last name, but he was a soldier under the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. You will see another man here that was a British praying to the same God.
Yes, also Chief was first Green Beret. He was in the Green Beret.
Yeah, and the Chief was a Green Beret here.
That's right.
Yeah,
in the first class of Green Berets.
And he was a Native American. He's 99% Native American.
And we also have someone who was a guerrilla fighter in Lebanon.
And we also have our all-star Black Panther.
Yes.
From America,
yes, we do.
Who is now sitting here in the same congregation praying to the same God.
Yes.
That's
Lisa
Willison.
Yes.
I don't think But
no, she's said in public that she's a former Black Panther. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Oh, when she said that at the courthouse the other
Yes, that's
day
right.
over there, it was like getting hit with a rock. But this is the woman that I'm very, very proud to know.
Yes. She's
right?
a wonderful
And
person.
she's
yes.
a wonderful person now.
Yes. Very, an NRA instructor, by the way, firearms instructor.
Yeah, and very stand up for the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
Now. Oh, there's another thing here that I'd like to point out, and I support this 100%. I was down in Harrisburg to the NRA Day, and one of the congressmen or senators down there, and I wish I could remember the name, he put a bill out to impeach people who are in flagrant violation of their constitutional oath. Every political leader in this country takes a constitutional oath, swears a constitutional oath to the Constitution of, and people who are in flagrant violation of that constitutional oath should be impeached. I really believe that. This is one of the ways that the Republicans and the Democrats can drain the swamp in Washington.
Yes.
It's the most effective way.
Okay, shall we? Let's go to Austria now.
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do so choose. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. That makes me feel pretty good.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. The headline is Austria's right-wing government. This is from the Daily Mail in UK. Right-wing government plans to shut down 7 mosques and expel up to 40 foreign-funded imams and crack down against Islamist ideology. Austria said today it could expel up to 60 Turkish-funded imams and their families, and would shut down 7 mosques as part of a crackdown on political Islam that was described as, quote, just the beginning, unquote, triggering fury in Ankara. Ankara being the capital of Turkey. Yeah. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said the government is shutting a hardline Turkish nationalist mosque in Vienna and dissolving a group called the Arab Religious Community that runs 6 mosques. His coalition government, an alliance of conservatives and the far right, came to power soon after Europe's migration crisis on promises to prevent another influx and clamp down on benefits for new immigrants and refugees. In a previous job as minister in charge of integration, Chancellor Kurz oversaw the passing of a tough law on Islam in 2015, which banned foreign funding of religious groups and created a duty for Muslim societies to have, quote, a positive fundamental view towards Austria's state and society, unquote. Quote, parallel societies, political Islam, and radicalization have no place in our country, Kurz told a news conference outlining the government's decisions, which were based on that law. This is just the beginning, far-right Vice Chancellor Heinz Christian Strache added. Ankara quickly, that's Turkey, denounced the move, and Turkey's presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalin said on Twitter, Austria's decision to close down 7 mosques and deport imams with a lame excuse is a reflection of the anti-Islam, racist, and discriminatory populist wave in this country. Interior Minister Herbert Kickl of the far-right Freedom Party, the junior partner in Austria's coalition government, said the circle of people possibly affected by these measures, the pool that we're talking about, comprises about 60 imams. Kickl was referring to imams with alleged links to the Turkish Islamic Cultural Associations, that's ATIB organization, a branch of Turkey's religious affairs agency, Diyanet. The Interior Ministry added that the government suspects them of contravening a ban on foreign funding of religious office holders. The ministry said 40 of them had an active application for extending their residency, and that a number of these had already been referred to immigration authorities where a process for expelling them was underway. Once family members were taken into account, a total 150 people risk losing their right to residence, Kickl told a Vienna press conference. 7 mosques, all with 7 mosques will also be shut down after an investigation by Austria's Religious Affairs Authority, sparked by images which emerged in April of children in a Turkish-backed mosque playing dead and reenacting the World War I Battle of Gallipoli. World War I Battle of Gallipoli was where British soldiers, British forces attempted to make a landing in Turkey, actually, near the Bosphorus Straits. And because things were, kind of stalemated on the Western Front then, and so they were trying to make an end run around that, because at that time Turkey was allied with the Habsburg Empire, the Habsburgs and the Germany and Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So that was a war in which Turkey and Austria then were allied at that time, because it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and especially for Winston Churchill, who was I think sort of the overall commander of the British Navy at that time. And so the Turkish-backed mosques had their children playing dead and reenacting the World War I Battle of Gallipoli. So anyway, that's what that's about. But anyway, that I guess Austria and Turkey were on the same side then. Anyway, so parallel societies, political Islam, and radicalization have no place in our country, said Chancellor Sebastian Kurz of the ruling center-right People's Party. The photos of children published by the Falter Weekly show the young boys in camouflage uniforms marching, saluting, waving Turkish flags, and then playing dead. Their corpses, quote, corpses, unquote, were then lined up and draped in the flags. The mosque in question was run by ATIB. I guess that's the Turkish organization. ATIB itself condemned the photos at the time, calling the event highly regrettable and saying that it was called off before it had even ended. One of the mosques targeted by Friday's measure was in the Feveraten district of Vienna. The government said it had been operating illegally and that it was under the influence of the far-right Turkish political movement, the Grey Wolves. Worshippers arriving for Friday prayers were met with a sign on the door reading "closed" in Turkish and German. Kursant, a 26-year-old, told AFP, "I've been coming to this mosque frequently since I was a child. I've had lessons here. I've never heard anyone at the mosque, any of the employees, expressed any Salafist opinions. That's laughable." 6 other mosques are being closed down, 3 in Vienna, 2 in Upper Austria, and 1 in Carinthia. All but one of the mosques affected belong to the Arab Religious Association, according to the government. But while Turkey's presidential spokesman on Friday lambasted the measure as anti-Islam and racist move, other European far-right leaders welcomed the announcement. Marine Le Pen, the leader of the French Front National, and said on Twitter, "Austria is taking things in hand and showing that when you want to, you can." Matteo Salvini, head of Italy's League and Interior Minister in the new government, also tweeted his approval, saying, "Those who exploit their faith to endanger a country's security should be expelled." Turkey's relations with Austria have long been strained, with Kurz calling on the European Union to break off negotiations on Ankara joining the bloc and banning Turkish politicians from campaigning in Austria for upcoming elections. That would be for the, I guess, Turks in Austria can vote there. So that's why Turkish politicians want to campaign there. Austria, a country of 8.8 million people, has roughly 600,000 Muslim inhabitants, more than half of whom are Turkish or have families of Turkish origin. About 360,000 people of Turkish origin live in Austria, including 117,000 Turkish nationals. Last week, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan attacked Kurz, saying, "This immoral chancellor has a problem with us. He's throwing his weight around and making a scene," Erdogan went on. Both Kurz of the center-right People's Party and the FPO, made immigration and integration major themes in their election campaigns last year. The topic had been pushed up the political agenda by the migrant crisis of 2015 and 16, which saw more than 150,000 people seeking asylum in the country of 8.7 million. In Friday's press conference, Kurtz was keen to emphasize that the action was being taken under legislation to regulate Islamic associations that he himself brought in as a minister of the previous government and which had so far, in his opinion, not been used often enough. The conservative Kurtz became chancellor in December in a coalition with the anti-migration Freedom Party. In campaigning for last year's election, both coalition partners called for tougher immigration controls, quick deportations of asylum seekers whose requests are denied, and a crackdown on radical Islam. The government recently announced plans to ban girls in elementary schools and kindergartens from wearing headscarves, adding to existing restrictions on veils. All right, so that's the article. But, you know, for to get into Europe, and there is a clash of civilization here because when we're not looking at the people, you know, I just said the majority of the people are good. 90% of the people are good. But when you look at what is being taught, what is being taught, then we see that there are fundamental differences of civilization between Judeo-Christianity, but Islam does not. Islam teaches that people who are not Islamic can be killed. In fact, David Woods has been pointing this out in his very hilarious videos called Islamicize Me, where Islam, this is a series of videos on YouTube, where these are enacted. Islam, the title is Islamicize Me, but when they find out though that there are some strange things and some horrifying things, such as then it's okay and it is even to kill that person. Now, people in America, Muslims are in America, Islamic believers in America, are influenced by the surrounding Judeo-Christian culture, I think. And so they are not living completely according to the original Islamic texts. But they need to be aware, and we need to be aware, that Islam is not a religion of peace. And this is why Father, when Father, you know, met with other religious leaders, he met with Buddhist leaders, he met with Islam leaders, blessing, they need to connect with him as the Christ. Because it is only through Christ that we are able to receive salvation and everlasting. Now we see more. We have a big audience today. Wow. Welcome. All right. We have Jack Harris here today. All right, we have more people in the audience today. We have our biggest crowd, I think. We have now 4.
Yeah, all 4. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. I should not have done that. Okay.
We have to have some fun.
So Austria is expelling up to 60 imams, but including family members, it's going to be about 150 people related to this. Okay. And here, Bill Clinton. Wow. Yeah. So suicide now the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. Air Force grounds B-1 bombers. Let's see what that's about, because we're going to need those planes pretty soon with North Korea, I'm afraid.
I certainly hope you're wrong about that, but I can't say are.
Yeah, well, just need them to be available.
Yes.
The Air Force has grounded, this is a Washington Times article, the Air Force has grounded its entire fleet of B-1B Lancer bombers due to safety concerns, military officials said Friday, putting out of service a key part of U.S. long-range bombing capabilities that had recently taken part in airstrikes in Syria. In a statement Friday, the Air Force said it issued the order Thursday following an incident in Texas. During the safety investigation process following an emergency landing of a B-1B in Midland, Texas, an issue with ejection seat components was discovered that necessitated the stand down. Involved aircraft will return to flight, Air Force Global Strike Command said in a statement. All right, so we get at least a few up in time for what I think is a coming. Yeah, I think there is. I'm sorry, there is a conflict with North Korea coming.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that, but I'm pretty sure that there is. The Safety Investigation Board is ongoing. The Air Force continued. The SIB's purpose is to prevent. That's the Safety Investigation Board. SIB's purpose is to prevent future mishaps or losses and is comprised of experts who investigate the incident and recommend corrective actions. The safety the B-1B Lancer bombers returned to action in that thing. They tried to use the ejection, but then if that had been done, the plane would miss. But they were forced.
They were able to control the landing.
They were able to land it. So they saved $317 million in my mind.
And they saved a lot of lives.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere they saved at least certainly saved some lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway,
of innocent people.
But let's get those B-1 bombers back. Need them. We're going to need them. I'm sorry to say, but we're going to need them.
America must maintain a military capable of drawing back anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's an absolute must in the immediate future.
Mm-hmm. All right. Drone surveillance state. This is quartz.com, qz.com. This was published June 8th. That's yesterday. Affordable consumer technology has made surveillance cheap and commoditized. And commoditized AR software has made it automatic. Those two trends merged this week when drone manufacturer DJI partnered June 5th with Axon, the company that makes taser weapons and police body cameras, to sell drones to local police departments around the United States. Now, not only do local police have access to drones, but footage from those flying cameras will be automatically analyzed by AI systems not disclosed to the public. Footage will be uploaded or streamed to Axon's digital cloud for police cameras, like the body cameras it currently sells, where it can be analyzed by Axon's AI and used for anything from crowd monitoring to search and rescue, the company writes on its website. This sounds vague, but AI research published 2 days earlier by academics from India and the UK shows exactly how such a drone system could be used. The paper titled Eye in the Sky details how drone footage could be used to detect violent individuals, quote unquote, in real time. To train the AI, the researchers flew a drone to snap 2,000 images of people pretending to hurt each other. But since the researchers didn't use real data and carefully staged the information, the AI analyzed to learn the difference between violence and normal human motion, there's no guarantee that it would work well in the real world. David Sumter, author of Outnumbered, Exploring the Algorithms That Control Our Lives. What the algorithm has done is classify individuals with their hands or legs in the air as violent. So if we're saying Ongman Se, we're going to get classified as violent, aren't we? Oh boy, we're in trouble. Classify individuals with their hands or legs in the air as violent, Sumter wrote. Others, like Google, ethics hawk Meredith Whittaker, tweeted that the research was flawed and that AI is facing mounting ethical crisis. Yes, look at the self-driven cars that keep crashing. Other researchers, including Google and Facebook, have also done extensive research trying to solve the same problem of tracking how people move and what those movements might indicate they're doing. But the eye in the sky researchers are trying to associate certain poses with intent. The researchers don't discuss any false positives for actions that could be misinterpreted as violent, such as play fighting, knocking a fly off someone's shoulder, or grabbing someone who's falling, or shouting Ongman Se. All right. Regardless of questions surrounding the AI's legitimacy, the Verge reports that researchers have gotten approval to test the technology during 2 festivals in India in October. With $160 for a parrot drone like the Eye in the Sky team used, and a few pennies for Amazon's cloud AI platform, anyone with a coding background could have made a similar system. Even teens and cucumber farmers are building their own AI systems. Cucumber farmers, okay, well, that's a new one to me. But the Eye in the Sky paper was published publicly, unlike Axon's technology, the firm which has acquired 2 AI companies and has access to petabytes of police camera footage. Petabyte, is that 1,000 times a terabyte, I guess, has no obligation to disclose how the AI was trained or whether it's accurate or unbiased. Axon wasn't immediately available to explain how it analyzed footage captured by its cameras. Other kinds of AI, like facial recognition, are already in use in China to surveil ethnic minorities. U.S. authorities, like the Chicago Police Department, are already starting to adopt AI systems for predictive policing, another pursuit rife with bad data. In Baltimore, a plane loaded with cameras was secretly deployed as a surveillance tool until 2016. But now AI-powered surveillance systems are becoming as easy for a police department to order as a car, handcuffs, or anything else they feel they need to effectively do their job. And now drones are already getting the green light for police use, not just for the surveillance, but also to dispense pepper spray and tear gas. That is definitely a bad idea. The artificial intelligence is going to be influenced by the people who program it and who determine the way that it learns. It's a learning technology, and it's going to. Many people have warned about this, that it could destroy humanity. That AI systems will say, well, there are problems in the world. What is the cause of the problems? Human beings are the cause of the problems. Okay, well, get rid of human beings and we get rid of the problem.
That could very easily happen.
Yes. So artificial intelligence is definitely coming, but how is it going to be used for good as opposed to being used for evil? That is a huge challenge that appears to be coming up on the horizon. And I don't know yet how that's going to be dealt with, because right now no one seems to be really dealing with it. How to give some kind of a morality to artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Yes. Because real human beings need to provide that morality to the artificial intelligence. Yes. French opposition media cry foul over fake news bill. Yeah, because this can really clamp down on free press. This out of Paris. French lawmakers accused the government of attempting to legalize censorship during a stormy debate Friday over a bill designed to fight so-called fake news during election campaigns. President Emmanuel Macron launched a crusade against misinformation after being targeted during the 2017 campaign by online rumors that he was gay and had a secret bank account in the Bahamas. Claims he rubbished, he says, as lies spread by Russian media and the French far right. The draft law allows a political candidate or party to seek an injunction preventing the publication of false information during the 3 months preceding a national election. I think this kind of thing would be handled very well by the Chinese Constitution, because there the period in which you are choosing president is very, very short. You don't have these months or years that we do now of going through a presidential campaign, because anyone with 10 supporters in the House of Representatives is a candidate, and so there are many, many candidates. And then you go through and you second round is 7 people go into the second round, and then 6, and then 5. So you cut it down, and once the process begins, it cannot end. So it's going to be over probably in a 24 hours, I would say, maximum, or 24, maybe 48 hours. So people don't have a chance to be spreading these kinds of false information. And people will be voting pretty much free from this kind of a media influence. The draft law allows a political candidate or party to seek an injunction preventing the publication of false information during the 3 months preceding a national election. So this is so they're worried about a 3-month period. Defending the bill on French radio, MP and I don't want to try to pronounce these French names, but Macron's an MP of Macron's centrist party said, what I don't want is that someday we have a Trump elected by Putin in our country. Well, Trump was not elected by Putin. That in itself is fake news. Mm-hmm. So this guy is guilty of the very thing that he's trying to prevent. Yeah, Trump was not elected by Putin, was he? He was elected by American people who were tired of having their rights trampled on by Clinton, Obama, and they said no more, no more. That's who elected. There you go. Go ahead.
Donald Trump was elected President of the United States because people want change in this country. I honestly believe that, and I do believe that he's being hamstrung to some degree by both parties for the simple reason that he is not a dyed-in-the-wool Republican and he is not a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat.
Well, he's not establishment.
Yeah, he's not. He's the outsider.
Right, he's an outsider.
In the Republican and Democratic parties are very, very. They don't bear each other's sins. Mm-hmm. They're very, very happy sharing power. Mm-hmm. And they collaborate tremendously against.
That's right.
Any other organization, any other group coming in to that, interfering with that sharing of power in this country. And I personally believe that you're going to see independent candidates starting to win elections in this country very, very shortly, very strongly in a not too distant future.
Well, Abraham Lincoln was also an outsider. In fact, he was actually that was the presidential election of 1860. I think was only the second time that the Republican Party put up a presidential candidate.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and he was the first person to be person to be elected as a Republican to the presidency. So that was an outsider, and actually in that election it was a 3-way race. And President Lincoln was elected in that as very much of an outsider.
Having led, we always knew that Lincoln was presided over the Civil War, but not until I read the book, The Life of Lincoln, did I realize that his election guaranteed that there would be a civil war.
Well, yeah, because
he was so anti-slavery.
Yes, the Southern states said that if this man is elected president, we're going to leave.
Yeah,
and they did, and and they wanted, once they left, they wanted the Union forces to withdraw from their territory, especially Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter was in the what was then no longer the United States, and so they started. That's where the war started. Yeah, they started firing on the fort. Okay, let's look at this article, the Daily Caller. Anyway, let's look at what it says. A prominent Iranian politician admitted that Iran knowingly facilitated the passage of Al-Qaeda members who later carried out the September 11, 2001 terror attacks, potentially confirming allegations in a 9/11 Commission report. Mohammad Javad Larijani, a former diplomat, member of a politically influential Iranian family, and current international affairs assistant in the Iranian judiciary, made the comments in an interview with Iranian state TV on May 30th, according to an Al Arabiya report. The interview translation was independently confirmed by the Daily Caller News Foundation. The 9/11 Commission report was released in July 2004. It is the official report of the events leading up to and after the events of the terror attacks and was put together by the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States at the request of Congress and then President George W. Bush. There was strong evidence that al-Qaeda hijackers traveled through Iran on their way to or from Afghanistan, taking advantage of the Iranian practice of not stamping Saudi passports, the report said. We believe this topic requires further investigation by the U.S. government, the commission concluded. The commission referred to the no-stamp situation as an Iranian practice. However, Larijani recalled it slightly differently. The al-Qaeda members asked the Iranian authorities not to stamp their passports because the Saudi government would prosecute them if it knew they traveled to Iran, he said. Our government agreed not to stamp the passports of some of them because they were on transit flights for 2 hours and they were resuming their flights without having their passports stamped, Larijani said. However, their movements were under the complete supervision of the Iranian intelligence. One of the pilots who passed through the Iranian airspace before September 11 was responsible for carrying out the attacks, and a Hezbollah military leader sat next to him, Larijani added. These remarks could possibly serve as further confirmation of the Commission's findings on Iran's involvement in the attacks. A New York federal judge ordered Iran to pay billions of dollars in damages to 9/11 victims in May, court documents obtained by ABC News show. The lawsuit was first filed in 2004 and allowed to go forward in 2016 after Congress passed the Justice Against Sponsored Terrorism Act. In December 2011, a New York federal judge held a hearing and found that the evidence presented established that Iran's provision of material support to al-Qaeda was a cause of the 9/11 attacks and the resulting damage, injuries, and deaths, said Attorney General Robert Heffel of Motley Rice LLC, who represents the plaintiffs. Larijani acknowledged this lawsuit in his interview with Iranian state TV and said he believes the U.S. incorrectly took the airport facilitation as evidence of direct Iranian involvement, despite confirming Iran's involvement in the interview. So Iran was involved in the 9/11 attacks, it seems. A lot more information has to come out about the 9/11 attacks, so because there was also, there has to be, there are a lot of questions about 9/11 that are certainly unsolved, and the architects for 9/11 Truth have pointed out that some of the things that happened that day, controlled demolition, especially on World Trade Center Building 7, which was not hit by an airplane and yet collapsed at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, about 8 hours after the planes hit the
solid steel frame building.
Yes, and that is and the official report is that this happened because of the office fires that happened inside of that building as a result of debris from the World Trade Center buildings. But no other office building in the United States has ever collapsed as a result of office fires.
Even steel frame buildings just don't do it anyway. It's not only here in America. There's
in fact, anywhere in the world, but that no matter how you look at that video of that World Trade Center 73rd building to collapse that day, it collapses
in exactly the same way that the others two did. It just started to. It happened so fast, and so thoroughly demolished. It could not have been just a few fires. A few fires.
So the question needs to be answered: how did that building come down, and why was it demolished? Because it seems that it was demolished on purpose that day. That really is the natural conclusion that you have to come to when you watch those videos. And
if you watch Mr. Gage's presentation, it's the lowest point in my American life.
And there are a lot more questions about that day as well, such as how could people with very little training in flying an aircraft hit a building? That's actually not an easy thing to do.
they interviewed
Mhm.
airline pilots
Mhm.
that said they couldn't come close
Right.
to hitting those buildings.
Right.
At that,
It would take a lot more training than what those men received.
it was they were there was a guidance system in the plane. There was a pinpoint guidance system in those planes. There's 9/11 is the lowest point in my American life. After seeing Richard Gage's presentation two or three times, so that it actually sank in and you could see the rippling explosions 10 floors below where the collapse was happening. Terrible.
And what the architects for 9/11 Truth are asking for is a bona fide investigation, a real investigation, which was not done.
Which was never done.
Which was never done. And the evidence was shipped off to China as scrap metal and debris, and was never really scientifically investigated, even though that was evidence from a crime scene. Obviously, it was a crime scene. And I hope that someday we will learn about what actually happened on 9/11 that day. That's already about 17 years ago now.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on in Argentina. Argentina is in deep financial trouble. The last we heard, Argentina was asking the IMF for help to get out of its financial difficulty, and there was concern that their financial meltdown might spread to other countries. Well, let's see what's going on now. This is in zerohedge.com. Last night, and this is published yesterday, so that would be day before yesterday now. This is on Thursday. Last night, Argentina got 50 billion pieces of good news when the IMF agreed to prevent the troubled Latin American nation to provide the troubled Latin American nation with a $50 billion standby loan, the largest even in IMF history. Wow, they're really in trouble. They're getting the largest loan in IMF history. It also got some bad news when the central bank announced it would remove the 25 to US dollar barrier it had imposed in early May to prevent an escalating currency crisis. Well, this morning, contrary to expectations that the Argentine peso would rise on the IMF loan, ARS, that's the Argentine peso, I guess, resumed its sell-off and promptly breached the central bank's 25 to USD barrier and plunged 2.3% to 25.55. Let's see, the breach of the barrier shows that confused traders are seeking to find a fair value of the Argentine peso after almost a month of living with a virtual cap. This is what happens, you see, when the governments interfere in the free market. Because price has to be set by the free decisions of buyers and sellers. And when where those two meet, that's where the price is. But when the government comes in and says, no, we're going to set the price here, then you don't know where the actual price is. So now the Argentine peso is trying to find its actual price, the actual value on the free market. So it's always bad for the government to interfere in markets, and this is what the Fed does, of course, regularly, and that's not a good idea either. We don't know what interest rates actually are, what they actually should be, because the Fed keeps interfering and setting interest rates, trying to influence interest rates with their activity. The move is also surprising as it contrasts with the positive impact from the IMF deal seen in sovereign bonds market, with Argentina's century bonds due in 2117 dropping modestly by 18 basis points to 8.02%. So these are bonds where Argentina basically is borrowing money for 100 years. And they're saying, you give us $100 or, however much it is, probably more than $100, but as an example, $100, and we'll pay you back in 100 years with interest. And so right now, then the people who are buying that say, okay, well, I want to be able to get my money back before 100 years. So you have to pay me interest. So, for example, if it's I want 10%, maybe they can get the money. Maybe they can get their $100 back in what, about 8 or 9 years, I think. But here, they're charging now 8.02% for these 100-year bonds. That the interest rate shows how much the purchasers of the bonds trust that country, that this country is actually going to repay this debt. And if they're charging 8.02%, that probably means that they don't believe Argentina is going to be around 100 years from now to actually repay this debt. So they want their money back before 100 years is up. Meanwhile, there is the political blowback to consider, as Bloomberg notes, after the knee-jerk reaction and market stabilization of the new level, assuming there is one. Traders will start watching the steps government will make to achieve new fiscal targets, as Argentina is well known for protests and the latest round of IMF austerity in the form of cuts in jobs and government spending is unlikely to be achieved peacefully. When the IMF gives a country a loan like this, they always attach certain conditions, like cutting the government budget. And that would be good if the government would then transfer those functions to the private sector. But in many cases, that's not done, and it causes a lot of pain, and people begin to riot or protest, and we've seen that in many countries where the IMF has stepped in with a lot of the chaos is caused by these IMF actions. Meanwhile, as Bloomberg's Sebastian Boyd writes, given the pace of inflation, the peso needs to weaken just to maintain the real exchange rate, and arguably it should fall more than that. But today is going to be interesting. It looks as if the markets want to test the bank's resolve again. As we reported yesterday, Argentina will seek a fiscal deficit to GDP of 2.7% this year and 1.3% in 2019. So in other words, this is talking about the government deficit as a ratio of GDP, 2.7% this year. That's rather high, and 1.3% in 2019. Below the previous targets, which were 3.2% and 2.2%, respectively. The country is expected to balance its budget in 2020. Well, that would be great. That would certainly be great if they can balance their budget in 2020. But we'll see. Ironically, even as the Brazilian real is stabilizing for now, after last night's central bank intervention, the EM is selling off in Latin America for now, as merely jumped borders across to Argentina. The question is whether the central bank will be forced to intervene again. Well, central banks always cause problems, and their solutions are not really solutions. And the Chilean Constitution outlaws a central bank. So this means that interest rates will be determined by a free market value, by the free market. If banks are able to loan a lot of money, if there are a lot of businesses who want to borrow money, then interest rates will naturally go up, because that means there's more demand for money. And so if there's more demand, well, just like any other commodity, when the demand increases, the price goes up. If given constant supply, if the supply stays the same. So then interest rates will go up. And as interest rates go up, businesses begin to think, can I still make money at this higher interest rate? And if the answer is yes, they will keep borrowing money in order to expand their business. But at some point, businesses are going to say, wait a second, I can't make money at this level anymore. I'm going to stop borrowing. Well, at that point, then interest rates are likely to start coming down again. So it depends on growth and productivity and so forth, so that and this all this will factor in, so that interest rates can be determined by the free market. We don't need to have the Federal Reserve Board, a meeting every once in a while to decide, okay, well, we're going to raise interest because we're afraid the economy is growing too quickly. And there may be a boom-bust cycle. This is what they say. They're trying to prevent the boom-bust cycle, they say. Boom and bust, they say. This is what they say they're doing. But in actuality, they're interfering in the market, and they're actually exacerbating and making worse the problems that occur. Yeah, the 1929 crash came after the Fed came into existence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the way that the Fed dealt with that actually made the problem worse, not better. People say that we're smarter than the market. We know how to control the interest rates, but they don't. They don't.
Humans are definitely not as smart as we think we are.
No.
That's that. There's a lot of examples of that.
Okay, let's see. We still have some time, so let's look at how a university prohibits harsh text messages. The whole idea of a university is being questioned by more and more people. Let's see. As a part of its code of conduct, a public university in Alabama prohibits its students from sending, quote, harsh text messages, unquote, a policy that has earned it the worst possible rating from a campus free speech watchdog group. The University of West Alabama's cyberbullying and cyber harassment policy defines harassment as, quote, conduct that disrupts the educational environment of the university, unquote. I could list a few things that disrupt educational environment, but that I remember, but we won't go there right now. Conduct that the university has defined as harassment includes harsh text messages like loud rock music in the dorm room next door. That definitely it disrupts the educational environment. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there are a few other things that we really won't mention. Conduct that the university has defined as harassment includes, quote, harsh text messages or emails, rumors sent by email or posted on social networking sites, and embarrassing pictures, videos, websites, or fake profiles, unquote. The policy provides several examples of, quote, instances where social media can cause harm to the university or a member of the UWA community, though none of the examples include, quote, harsh text messages or rumors. The College Fix reached out repeatedly to university officials to learn more about the policy, including whether any student has ever been sanctioned by the school for sending a harsh text message. What would be a harsh text message? Dear John, I don't think we should see each other anymore. That might be a harsh text message.
Yes, it could be stated in other words too.
Let's just be friends.
Yeah.
The school's public relations department did not respond to several requests for comment, nor did its vice president of student affairs, Richard Hester. But basically, these. Hey guys, university is such a protected bubble environment. I think kids ought to be prepared for the harsh realities of the world after they graduate, where harsh text messages will be sent and received, and I don't think you can protect kids from that. And they just have to learn how to, study in spite of that. Just like they study in spite of the loud rock music in the room next door. They can also study through these harsh text messages, I think, or at least they should be able to. Otherwise, they're just creating, snowflakes who have no ability to deal with the real world. Yeah, we have a university student over here. What do you think about this? She just laughs. Okay, we'll interview her later about her educational environment. Okay.
That might be an interesting interview.
It might be an interesting interview. I wish we could do it on camera, but you don't want to come on camera, do you? Would you like to? No. Okay. All right. Okay. She goes to a university that is not far from here, and she's on summer vacation. Here, and she's visiting us during the summer vacation.
And where's she from?
We can ask her later on.
Okay.
I don't think yes.
Okay.
We don't want to disturb her educational environment by talking too much about her on camera. Yes. Yes. Let's see. Canadian officials traveled to California and Florida to tell people don't come to Canada. The immigrants, that is, the illegal immigrants. This is out of.
Illegal.
Pardon?
I never did get that. Let's adopt illegal immigrants. Let's adopt 6 million illegal immigrants. That never went anywhere with me. We have enough of people to do those jobs. And
well, there's a legal process, and a lot of people come to America. Right. I think hundreds of thousands of people actually come to America every year legally.
Legal.
Yes.
They're welcome. They should be welcome with those.
And they come to America through a legal process that is established by Congress, but then there are people that say we don't want to do it that way. Yeah. So anyway, Miami, as President Trump travels north to Canada to attend the G7 summit, Canadian officials have been heading south to try to stem a wave of undocumented immigrants headed their way. In what has become an increasingly regular mission, Canadian representatives visited the U.S. this week to warn immigrants fearful over President Trump's immigration crackdown that they can't simply rush north of the border to find safe haven. Randy, wow. Yeah. What happened to the people with easy names anyway? A Liberal member of Parliament and let's just call him Randy, and a special advisor to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited South Florida this week to try to educate would-be immigrants about the limitations of the Canadian immigration system. In the past year, Canada has seen bursts of U.S.-based immigrants crossing illegally into Canada, mostly into Quebec province that borders New York and other northeastern U.S. states. In August, Royal Canadian Mounted Police caught more than 5,500 people trying to illegally cross from U.S. Those were mostly Haitian immigrants who will soon lose temporary protected status as part of the Trump administration's phase-out of the TPS program that has protected more than 300,000 people from countries struck by war and natural disasters. Only about 8% of their asylum applications have been approved, however, meaning the vast majority have been turned down and are being deported straight back to their home countries. People seem to think that if they cross the border, there's this land of milk and honey on the other side, Randy said from the Canadian consulate in Miami on Thursday. What we want is for people to have the right information. We want them to do the right thing for their families. The Canadians started conducting their visits to the U.S. last summer when they first saw their illegal immigration numbers going up. They visited Los Angeles, where many Mexican and Central American immigrants live, and they've made several trips to the Little Haiti neighborhood in Miami. This week, Randy met with, I'm not pronouncing his last name, I'm sorry, just calling him Randy. This week, Randy met with groups that work with a variety of immigrants in South Florida. He even went on a radio Caracol, is that? A Spanish language station to explain the realities of immigration using his best Spanish. And Olga Radchenko, Director of Parliamentary Affairs for Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, said officials and their 12 consulates around the U.S. have been trying to deliver the same message. And by this summer, the Miami consulate will have a new full-time officer whose responsibilities will include outreach to communities most likely to try to illegally enter Canada. Canadians are broadly supportive of immigration, Radchenko said, but Canadians truly believe in order and well-managed immigration. A part of the reason many immigrants try their luck in Canada is the way the country has responded to the global refugee crisis. The country has been increasing the total number of immigrants it admits each year. It's on pace to accept 310,000 permanent residents this year, with a goal of increasing the annual total to 340,000 by 2020. The Canadian government has also increased the number of refugees it accepts to help ease the burden on European countries that are overwhelmed with people fleeing war and famine in the Middle East and Africa. The country is planning to accept about 43,000 refugees this year, increasing that to nearly 49,000 by 2020. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has been trying to limit legal immigration and has at times completely halted the refugee program in the name of national security. The administration is pushing legislation to reduce the number of illegal immigrants admitted to the country, and it set a cap of 45,000 refugees for 2018, the lowest number since Congress passed the Refugee Act in 1980. The administration may not even reach that number, however, as it has only admitted or approved 14,887 refugees through Friday, with less than 4 months left in the fiscal year. The Canadian officials would not comment on the Trump administration's actions on immigration, but they emphasized how Canada, like the United States, is a land of immigrants that must always welcome those searching for a better life. Randy told the story of his forefathers who first landed in Canada in 1642. He said it makes no difference, however, whether someone's family has lived in Canada for 4 centuries, 4 decades, 4 months, or 4 minutes. A Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. Other than indigenous peoples, our country has been built on and will continue to be built on immigration. He said, but if you cross the border illegally, you will be breaking the law, you will be apprehended, and after that, you will be in detention. Well, the difference between 1642 and now, and also the difference between 1866 and now, 1866 is when my ancestors came to the United States. Actually, my what is it? Let's see, my grandfather and great-grandfather came to the United States as a 15-year-old boy in 1866, the year after the Civil War ended. But the difference between then and now is the welfare system. So if you have a welfare system, you cannot have open borders, because that will basically crash the country. But in 1642 and in 1866, people who came here were expected to make it on their own. And some people didn't make it. And if they couldn't make it, they had to go back home, or they died. Many people died here trying to make it, trying to build a better life for themselves here. My great-grandfather actually somehow came here as a 15-year-old boy, and then I think worked in coal mines, and then later went back to Scotland and brought more of his family, because he was able to establish a certain financial foundation, and he brought more of his family here. You know, at that time there were no passports, there were no visas. You just got on a boat and you just came, and once you landed, it was very simple. This was even before Ellis Island. You just landed in New York in what's now Battery Park, and you just walked off the boat basically, and the captain of the ship handed the American officer a list of names of the people who were on the boat and on the ship and the country of their origin, and that was it. And you just walked out and into the streets of New York, and you were on your own then, and you had to find whatever way you could to make it. And if you didn't, then you either returned to your country or you died. And many people did die, and many people returned. But so the difference now, though, is that we have a welfare system where people are given benefits, and so even failure then is not failure does not result in having to return to your country or dying here. So if you're going to have open borders, you can have open borders as long as you don't have a welfare system. Get rid of the welfare system, and yeah, you can open the borders, and people want to come and try their luck and see if they can make it, then they can do that. And if they can't, then because there's no welfare system, then they either have to rely on their families who are already here, or their community which is already here, and that's possible. But you can't rely on the government welfare, which is I think the way that the Choniguk is going to work. You cannot, in Choniguk, will not be able to rely on government welfare. So the people that came here from Haiti, they came here. They were allowed in here because there was natural disasters in Haiti, and also in El Salvador. I think also there was a large group of people who were allowed to come to the United States. In their program, their temporary protection status program has been ended also. And so at some point, and those were designed to be temporary. So they have to deal with the realities then of that. Let's see, what else shall we look at this morning? Oh yes, okay. The Guatemala situation. Let's look at the Guatemala situation. That's really media has been focusing on Hawaii, where nobody has died. Some people have been injured, but no one has died there as a result of the volcanic eruption. But in Guatemala, a lot of people are dying. Let's see what's going on there now. This is Guatemalan officials warned of falling ash from Fuego volcano late on Thursday and urged caution with flights as the Central American country recovers from devastating eruptions that have killed at least 109 people. Wow. The Seismological, Volcanic, and Meteorological Institute advised the Civil Aviation Authority to take precautions with flights amid renewed activity from the peak, which produced a massive eruption on Sunday. The death toll from Fuego's most violent eruption in 4 decades has been gradually rising and now stands at 109. The Guatemala's Disaster and Forensic Agency, INASIF, said earlier on Thursday. Authorities have said a communication breakdown between CONRED and volcanologists in Guatemala delayed evacuations from the surrounding area. Guatemala's public prosecutor said on Thursday it would open an investigation into whether protocols were followed to inform proper decision-making in the handling of the disaster. Rescue teams have been searching frantically for survivors and victims in the ravaged landscape, which is covered in ash and lava. The eruptions have showered volcanic ash over a vast area and spewed deadly, fast-moving pyroclastic flows through nearby towns. The U.S. government expressed its deepest condolences to the victims on Thursday and said it was sending emergency aid at Guatemala's request, including an unspecified amount of financial resources to help with food, water, and sanitation. The White House said in a statement it also was dispatching aircraft to transport burn victims for treatment in Florida. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies raised concerns about the economic cost of the disaster in the poor country. We should not underestimate the scale of the disaster. Critical emergency needs are still enormous, and affected communities will need sustained and long-term support, IFRC President said in a statement on Thursday. Roca, that's the IFRC president, noted that ash had fallen across more than half of Guatemala, covering areas where agriculture is crucial. Wow. We hope it will not mean a secondary disaster, he said. It sounds like that's what's happening, though. If you cover your plants with volcanic ash, nothing good can come of that. The IFRC has pledged more than 250,000 Swiss francs. That's $253,000 to support rescue efforts, and said those worst hit would need at least a year to recover. The suspension of rescue efforts around the volcano may be lifted if conditions on the ground improve, Conrad said. Then Volcan de Fuego, which means volcano of fire in Spanish, lies about 25 miles southwest of the capital, Guatemala City. All right, so 109 people have been killed in Guatemala. At least that's the number that's been confirmed so far. I suspect that there are more people out there who are still missing. We really pray for the people in Guatemala, and for the people who are assisting in the recovery and the search and recovery effort, and hope that people there can somehow find a way to live through this, work through this. That's really too bad. Let's see, we have a few more minutes, about 5 more minutes. Bernie says our socialist ideas are winning. How on earth can you think that? I was about to go in there and then I lost it. All right, let's look at the Southern Baptist hashtag #MeToo moment. This is out of NBC News, which is never friendly towards religious organizations, at least unless they are doing the bidding of the government. Hashtag #MeToo goes to church. Southern Baptists face a reckoning over treatment of women. Quote, many women have experienced horrific abuses within the power structure of our Christian world, unquote, Beth Moore, an evangelical teacher, wrote in a letter. Also in the Unification Church, there have been cases where pastors have raped sisters, sometimes in the prayer room, sometimes in front of True Father's photograph. As hard as that is to imagine, but this has happened, I know, in Korea. And I'm not singling out Korea, but just that's where my experience has been when I was in a position to learn about these things. And I pray that kind of thing is not going on in the Family Federation today, but the king has said that if you worship a goddess, then eventually it turns into temple prostitution. So I'm very concerned as to whether these kinds of things are happening in the Family Federation today. But anyway, let's read this article. The Southern Baptist Convention, the country's largest evangelical denomination, is headed for a showdown over its treatment of women that could not only have far-reaching ramifications for the church, but also influence the broader secular #MeToo movement. At its annual meeting next week in Dallas, delegates called messengers will decide whether to approve a resolution acknowledging that throughout the church's history, male leaders and members of the church, quote, wronged women, abused women, silenced women, objectified women. The #MeToo moment has come to American evangelicals. Albert Mohler, president of the flagship Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, wrote last month, and I am called to deal with it as a Christian, as a minister of the gospel, as a seminary and college president, and as a public leader. And well, NBC News is a secular news organization that is going to use this as a weapon against Christianity in general. But it is true that Christianity and our church is not exempt from this. Need to always be aware of this kind of thing, but because and Father was very much aware of this, and Father established rules. He established rules where brothers and sisters could not be in the same room at the same time unless the door was open, for example. And if you go back when Father was living communally with members in the 50s and 60s, he established definite rules like this, and we can go back and look at those. The convention is meeting in the wake of several widely publicized scandals in which prominent Southern Baptist leaders have been accused of or having admitted inappropriate behavior towards women. Quote, many women have experienced horrific abuses within the power structures of our Christian world. Unquote, Beth Moore. But when they say within our Christian world, then they are accusing Christianity as a whole. And Christianity does not teach this. It teaches the equal treatment of women. It is Islam that enslaves women and treats them as chattel, as if they were cattle, for example. So this is there are forces, secular forces, and even forces within Christianity that will use this to try to undermine Christianity in general. And that's where we have to draw a distinction and watch out for that. Let's see, this is Structures of Our Christian World. Beth Moore, a prominent evangelical teacher in Houston, wrote in an open letter last month. Most recently, the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in nearby Fort Worth fired Paige Patterson, a preeminent figure in the denomination's conservative resurgence in recent decades, who had been its president since 2003. The seminary's board cited allegations that Patterson counseled a female student not to report that another student had raped her at a seminary he was leading in 2003, shortly before he took the Southwestern job. And yeah, rape always needs to be reported. And sometimes, I hear not about rape, but about things happening that shouldn't be happening. And I hear about them sort of through the grapevine, and I'm disappointed by that. I don't want to hear about these things through the grapevine. I want the people involved to directly report to me or another member of our staff so that it can be dealt with as an organization. But these things just sort of travel through the grapevine. Oh, you know what? And then I hear about it, and then I go to the people who are actually directly involved, and then I have to make the move to go get the report. To go to the people who were directly involved, who were actually there to get the accurate information. And that's disappointing, because if you are a victim like that, then you should be telling me about it, so that I can, or Greg, or Richard Panzer, or someone who is in a position to deal with this at an organizational level. Don't just put it into the grapevine. But if you do, and I hear about it, yeah, I'm gonna go get that. I'm gonna take these kinds of situations very seriously. The board also said that his history of remarks about women in general, for example, in a 2014 sermon, he described telling women that her son's ogling of an attractive teenage girl was an appropriately biblical response, was antithetical to the core value of our faith. The evangelical denominations need to connect with the second king, need to connect with True Father's lineage. Otherwise, they're going to get invaded by Satan. And this invasion is happening, we can see. Pattern's attorney accused the board of having misrepresented the client's actions in the 2003 case. In a statement, Patterson said, "I do not believe there is a woman or girl ever associated with me who would allege any abuse on my part, an allegation that no one appears to have made." The Patterson of Revelation came on the heels of Frank Page's resignation in March as president and chief executive of the Southern Baptist Convention's executive committee over what the church described as a morally inappropriate relationship in the recent past, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, we're out of time. And in fact, we've gone over time. So just to leave you with that message this morning as we close our broadcast. Thank you very much, Jack, for coming in. Appreciate your being here and you giving your wonderful testimony and your wonderful comments.
I hope I've said some things that make sense to different people from around the world.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming in. We have a large audience this morning of 4 people. That's pretty good at this hour of the morning. All right. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today live, or those who are viewing this video later on. So God bless, Godspeed, and may his kingdom come.